Red clay. Folks will flim-flam it, but I'm near to touching 70 now, and for the first time in my life, I'm afraid to die. And it ain't that I was unafraid all these years. I just always been healthy enough to ignore it. I don't think nobody will flim-flam you if you try to tell them I was ignorant. It started one day in early spring of last year, though I remember it being cold enough to have still called it winter. Man comes walking down the driveway. Nobody walks down my driveway by accident. Says he's from the phone company, and they'd like to build a cell tower on my land. Well, I told him I'd have to think about it, but I knew then. I've had a few bad crops as of late, and in years when the harvest was good, I have had poor luck in the markets. The subsidies do not stretch like they used to. Goes to show, man can commit himself to the soil, the most honest labor there is, and still come out on his ass at the whim of some far-off higher power he's got as much a chance of influencing as the Cheyenne had at bringing down rain from the thunder god. Maybe I ought to do a dance to pump up corn futures. I started this journal to record my dreams and my health, but also to note one fact in particular for posterity. The dreams, all of it, started with the cell tower. It stunk from the start, truth be told. They came in an unmarked van, first of all, and a week earlier than I'd been warned to look for them. They were already there when the sun rose Monday morning. Fewer of them than I expected, too. I started taking binoculars on my evening walks and watching them. They never seemed to be working, but the tower begun to go up. The weekend came and I didn't see them working, but their van was there. Tires were covered in red clay. Were they inside it? I ventured a little closer on my walk, but it was hard to tell. I couldn't shake the notion that they were using recycled or even mismatched materials. Nothing about it looked new or standard. Come Monday, they were back at it, and I went out to confront them about all the incongruities, and they put me on the phone with their boss, who gave me a 5-minute earful, spitting and shouting at me till I was relieved just to leave. I lost track of how long they were there. Eventually, I saw the tower start to creep over the top of the hill from my kitchen window. Since they started building, I always could feel it over there, but that morning I woke up and it was there waiting for me, watching me make coffee through the window, squatting on the horizon like that, looming over everything, daring you to look at anything else. And it only went higher from there. Sometimes I could see them up there working on it, little ants, and I'd stand at my kitchen window for hours, just staring at them, wishing they'd fall. I tried to focus my mind, like through a magnifying glass, and aim it at them, but it just kept going higher. Then one day I woke up and they were gone. The tower was finished. There was a little red eye calmly blinking at the top. Always, always blinking. The first check came in the mail a week later. Allow me to set the scene, for you will not grasp the depth of my current horror unless you can see the homestead for yourself in all its sparse solitude, unless you can feel the atmosphere of the place weighing heavy and damp in your lungs. This is the first in a series of journal entries found in a pile in the bureau desk of a Georgia farmer. Name redacted. The farmer himself is still in bed, not 5 feet from the desk, wrapped in a foil blanket and holding a rifle between his knees with the barrel tucked up under his chin. He was dead a long time before I found him. The curious thing is that there isn't a scratch on his head. The front door had been boarded up and nailed shut at some point, but was unlocked when I arrived. The nails had been pulled out from the inside and set in a little pile in one corner of the room next to the hammer. I'm a census taker. I end up a lot of places nobody else ever goes without an invitation or a very good reason. It's hard work and lonely, but I appreciate that it is real. We need to know how many people there are, so we send out people with clipboards to walk up and down every alley and back road and rural drive and knock on doors and take tally. There is no voodoo, no mystery, no mortgage-backed derivatives or liquidity crises or fiduciary responsibilities to shareholders. Just feet on pavement, knuckles on front doors, pen on paper. The base stuff of civilizations back to Babylon. You hear stories about this sort of thing happening. Well, it was late in the day and I was several miles from town, and when I exited the house upon reading this entry, I found a serious storm bearing down from the east. I do not mean to say that I was glad to pass the night in the house of a dead man, only that his condition spared me the agony of having to ask or fish for an invitation. I found the farmer's living room tidy, the blankets all folded, a layer of dust over everything in the kitchen, lemons long ago devoured by mold. Some of the windows were covered in foil, and it appeared all of them had been at one point. I looked out the little window over the sink and waited for the rain. The landscape was wholly austere and still winter dead in the first week of March. It was true that the cell tower dominated the horizon. There was nothing for competition, save a few semi-orderly rows of windbreak trees, all brown bark and bent limbs. The fields, thawed and unplanted, unplowed, fringed with muddy little piles of snow and ice and beginning to sprout weeds. Not another human residence as far as you could see, and for a good deal longer than that in the direction I'd come from. The rain began, and it spattered the window and drummed the roof, and I realized that I had subconsciously been moving about the house in complete silence, softening my steps, twisting doorknobs so that they would make no noise on closing. Night fell, and I was glad to find the electricity still flowing. A moment later, I found out the phone was still connected as well, and nearly sprinted out the front door in fright. I answered it to make the ringing stop, to protect the silence, hardly thinking. But there was no one on the other end, or whoever was only wanted to listen. I hung up, but it was too late. I could feel that some presence had been allowed to breach the walls and was squatting in the living room beside me, quickly swallowing all the oxygen in the room which my lungs had not yet claimed. The oldest entry, dated May 3rd, reads, "Woke up this morning and pissed blood. Funny thing is, didn't hurt in the least. You can bet I just about shrieked at the sight of it, though. Strange dream last night. Not strange because strange things happened in it, although they did, but because all of these dreams do not feel like any dream I have ever had before. In fact, they hardly even feel like my dreams. And when I wake up in the morning, I feel even more tired than when I went to sleep, and dark clouds hang over my head all day. Until now, I had not made the connection between the dream and the blood. Maybe there is no connection besides their proximity in this journal. I was in town, walking down a neighborhood street that I did not recognize. It was a sunny day. I don't know where I was going, but it was somewhere I had every right to be. The post office, maybe, or the grocery store. And out of nowhere, this Rottweiler comes charging at me and hits the fence not 3 feet from where I'm standing. I wasn't sure he couldn't jump it if he really had a mind to. Nearly gave me a heart attack. But then his owner came outside. I gave them a friendly wave, but they didn't even acknowledge me. Just went and opened the gate and let their dog at me. I started running, and right before he caught me, I woke up. Alongside his diary, I found stacks upon stacks of records. The man had documented everything for 40 years. Weather, high and low temperatures, humidity, soil acidity. Every cent in and out of his bank account, every tractor or truck part replaced. Receipts from every roofing job, the type of bugs he found in the dirt. Haircut receipts, weights of animals, how many eggs each hen laid, how many male, how many female chicks. Brands of paint used to paint the house, the barn, the tractor. Tracking the Dow and NASDAQ alongside his own weight and blood pressure. I picked through the cans in the pantry and found enough to fill my stomach, and then I started a fire and made a bed for myself on the couch. It's possible that my grandfather first brought electricity here when he worked for the TVA. Despite my exhaustion, sleep would not take me. The old man's journal was sitting on the coffee table, so I put another log on the fire. The entry dated June 8th reads, persistent cough, despite the warmer weather outside. Sometimes blood. More strange dreams. Always a sharp headache in my temples when I wake up these days, but it usually goes away after about an hour. 3 times I put the kettle on for coffee and then forgot to make the coffee. Maybe my memory really is going. In my dream, I was back in the orphanage, where I spent 18 months after my parents died until they could track down my aunt overseas. I didn't even know I had an aunt. I was prepared to pass the rest of my childhood there. In my dream, I'm laying in bed, but I can't sleep, and the headmistress is standing in the doorway, watching us. I don't dare open my eyes. I can just feel her there, blocking out the light from the hall, observing, studying, breathing through reptile nostrils. I wasn't supposed to be awake. I couldn't sense if any of the other boys were awake. I suspected not. I didn't know if Madame Vonch was looking at me directly, but I thought she might be. I tried to relax my eyes so that it wouldn't look like I was clenching them shut. And then I heard her clicky footsteps come inside and start walking up and down the aisles of beds. I could picture her hands held stiffly behind her back. Every so often, she'd say, in a real low tone, but the room was quiet enough so that you can hear her wherever you were. Some of us aren't sleeping. I can tell who is pretending. Her footsteps came closer and closer, and then they rounded the corner and stopped right by my bed, right behind my back. I could hear her breathing through her nose. Some of us aren't sleeping. I can tell who is pretending. She didn't move. And pretending is the same as lying. I could hear her breathing through her nose. I hated to wake up alone after a dream like that. Nadine was always an anchor next to me in the bed, something I could grab onto to bring me back to this world and hold me here. Instead, I've been seeing Madame Vonch in every dark corner of the house, every rocking chair with a sweater on it. Anytime I write, or even talk to myself, even just in my head, it feels like Nadine is listening. In that way, she never really left. In that way, we are closer than ever. Like we're having a never-ending dialogue, the two of us, me and the version of her that lives in my head. That's not such a bad version of immortality. The idealized version of us, our loved ones, craft in their head, living as their co-pilot till the lights go out on all of them too. After that, who cares? I've met some of the kids today. You want to be remembered and admired by them? Be my guest. I still miss her, though. The shine went out of life after she left. Hard to lie to myself that any of it much matters at this point. I never had the constitution for suicide, though. The way I see it, you only go around this ride the one time, and there's plenty of time for not existing once you're done with it, so you might as well stay on the bull as long as you can. See what all there is to see while you're here, good and bad. Even if it's an argument with yourself just to wash the dishes every night on account of, hell, could just as easily kill myself. Never have to wash the dishes again. Midnight. The storm is passing into the distance, lightning still sputtering silently on the horizon. The old man's yard, completely windless. Rocking chair, motionless on the porch. It's so quiet, my ears are ringing. I can hear my pulse. If the old man were breathing upstairs, I'd probably hear that too. I read on. September 19th. I forget already why I picked where I picked to let them build. They offered me 3 options. It just seemed like a nice spot, I guess. High up with a view. Suitable for something anyways. Not that there's much to look at around here. I don't remember what I dreamed last night, but there was no headache when I woke up. In fact, I felt more clear-headed than I have in months. I almost certainly would not have even stopped to write here if not for what I found on the porch outside the front door. It must have rained in the night. The fields are mud. There was a footprint left there, right in front of my door, marked in red clay. Smallish, like a woman's, if I had to guess it. Not a shoe print, a bare footprint. Another thing, which I would not think to note, except that it has just happened again, interrupting my writing. The phone calls. At least once a day now, it rings, and there's someone on the other end, but nobody ever talks. Is this because of the tower? I tried calling the phone company and nobody picked up. Figures. I never made the connection till both ended up in this journal. Maybe there is no connection. Maybe there is only my mind searching for patterns and inventing stories out of random events where it can't find any. Hello? I answered the phone like I was worried it was going to wake him upstairs. I keep waiting for the lightning. In my mind's eye, I can see someone sitting in the rocking chair on the porch, watching the storm. I know they're there. And then the sky flashes and the chair is empty. November 30th. Someone spoke to me today. On the phone. I couldn't tell who, or what they said, or even what language they spoke. Too garbled. Sounded too distant. Don't get too many calls these days otherwise, from folks I know. I've settled all business with the outside world, more or less, save for essential type services. I stay current on my grocery bill. More blood in the toilet this morning. Ran out in a bit of a panic. Grabbed the phone, thinking to call the doctor. But when I returned to the bathroom, the toilet bowl was fresh. Clean, like it had been flushed. Maybe I am just losing my mind. January 5th. Hair on the pillow this morning. in chunks. Can't find any bald spots in the mirror. With the windows open, you can hear the thing buzzing away out there over the hill. Day and night, it never stops. Buzzing, buzzing, the eye is always blinking, blinking. It has to be connected. It seems almost impossible that it wouldn't be. Waves passing through me every second of the day. They put a lead vest on you for a quick x-ray. I called the company to inquire and just put on hold for 3 hours and gave up. No dreams lately. None that I remember anyways. January 30th. Tired all the time lately. Coffee, no coffee, it makes no difference. Lot of sleep, little sleep. I haven't woken up feeling rested in more than a week. I usually wake up terrified, actually. Drenched in sweat, with a fear in the pit of my stomach that I can't explain. I think I am dreaming things. I just don't remember them. I swear I look paler in the mirror these days. Maybe I'm just tired. I am skinnier, that I can verify. Lost almost 9 pounds last week. Just not much of an appetite, I guess. That goddamn thing never stops buzzing day and night. Wake up at 3 in the goddamn morning and hear it buzzing outside the window. Waves smacking my body over and over and over again. Passing through me, through my organs. I called the phone company again, out of desperation. So early this morning, it was still late last night. But despite the hour, someone answered. He listened to my complaint and said, "We are very sorry to hear that, sir." While I was on the line, I thought to bring up the phone calls too. "That is curious indeed, sir. That certainly shouldn't be happening." I waited for him to say more, but that was all. I told him that someone needed to come out here and fix the buzzing and look into the calls, and he said he would put me on a service waiting list. When I asked how long that would take, he said that he was not allowed to say. March 15th. More blood this morning. My stomach hurts a little bit all the time now. I feel very weak. Another phone call, too, and I noticed something. I held the phone away from my ear and found not all of the sound was coming from the receiver. It was real quiet, but eventually I figured out the rest of it was coming from an electrical outlet. Then I realized it was coming out of all of them. Then whoever was on the other end hung up. Sometimes I read these journals back and find myself reading about things I don't even remember happening or writing about. Even when I don't remember my dreams, I wake up feeling as if I have been through an ordeal. I feel very vulnerable. I remember my last dream. I was here on the farm. It was night, and there was a tornado siren blowing somewhere in the distance. And I knew there really was a tornado coming. It was that special electric kind of quiet. And then I heard it over the hill, like a freight train coming toward me. And I went inside and tried to get into the cellar, except the door was locked and I could not find the key. It sounded like a barrage of artillery rolling toward me. I could not find the key. It should have been in my pocket or on the kitchen counter, but it was not. The house shook and the windows broke. I started to feel very light, then altogether weightless, and my feet left the ground. And as soon as they didn't come back down right away, I woke up. April 14th. It's Nadine. And it took me till her birthday to realize it. The phone rang again today as I was sitting down for dinner, and I went right to the outlet. It sounded so clear, like she was right there in the wall, but still whispering so I could barely hear her. She talked to me for a while, and then said goodbye and hung up. My back ached afterward. I don't remember what she said. Was supposed to start planting last week. Most days I don't feel like getting out of bed for much, and on the days that I do, I don't much see the point. My breath smells like there is something rotten in my stomach. Most days my stomach feels that way too, no matter how much mint I chew. The phone doesn't ring as much these days. I think she can tell I'm waiting for her to call. I could have sworn I lost a tooth yesterday, but today they're all there. It's getting warmer out. Tornado season. If I don't plant soon, I'll be in real trouble. Still owe the seed company on last year's bill. Could swear I heard footsteps on the porch a couple of nights ago when I was lying in bed. I don't think I was dreaming. In my dream last night, I was in junior high again, with Bobby, Evan, and Elliot. I remember them well. Elliot's family owned a funeral parlor, and in my dream the four of us were daring each other, and one at a time, climbing up and lying in one of the display model caskets. Thus ends the final entry in the diary. I found that all of the electrical outlets had been filled with caulk, and the door which seemed to lead to the cellar had been padlocked. I put the book back and held my breath and could have sworn I heard bare footsteps on the porch. When I was sure they were gone, if they'd ever been there, I crept silently to the door and made sure it was locked. I laid back down on the couch. It was so quiet outside, I thought I'd probably be able to hear someone walking down the road a quarter mile away. I was almost entirely asleep when the phone rang. Confused and a bit frazzled, I picked it up, muscle memory, but there was nobody on the other end. At least nobody speaking. Then I remembered and crawled over to the nearest outlet. I could hear them breathing. There was some grumbling, and I could barely tell the grumbling from the static. The outlet was dead. It sounded completely solid. But for a moment, when I brought it nearer, the phone signal became noticeably clearer. It was a woman who spoke, but her words were still garbled. I could barely be sure they were in English. 2 syllables, then one, then one. That was all. She spoke no more. But it was nearly 2 more minutes before she hung up. In the morning, I tried to call the coroner and found that the phone line had been cut at the wall. I straightened myself up and gathered my things and prepared to leave. There was a footprint on the porch, just in front of the door, in red clay. I could see the cell tower over the rise. I was almost drawn to it, like it was some sort of religious shrine. It was impossible to look away from it. From a certain angle, it just hit the eye all wrong. Fundamentally wrong, like my brain was incapable of processing the signals my optic nerve was feeding it. But then, a moment later, it was only a tower again, and a rather rickety-looking one at that. Up close, it was wholly underwhelming. I noticed a bald spot, perhaps 20 or 30 yards away, where the grass had worn thin and left a shock of red clay. A pair of large tread marks were baked deep into the mud, and as I came closer, I saw something half buried between them. A large stone, very flat, very polished, and standing over it I could detect sharp, angular cuts in the granite. I brushed it and the dirt came off in clods. It was a grave marker. I knew the name I would read before I tipped the thing over. Nadine Martin. Died nearly 3 years ago. The tower just kept buzzing. The eye kept winking. It was still early, and the light was changing every few minutes, and I sat in the grass and watched the tower seemingly take new form with each new shade of morning, the disorienting interplay of shadows and latticework, queer reflections off the myriad of various metals. The tower at one turn imposing, bigger than I remembered, and then, somehow before my eyes, much smaller, almost dingy looking. And the buzzing, undulating, if you listened close enough, rising and falling like an army of tireless cicadas, with a rhythm that is hard to pin down, but undeniable. It draws you in, wraps you up, crackling with unearthly power. It was noon before I knew it. The morning had lasted an eternity, and then ended with one blink of my eyes. I should have been on the road hours ago. I took the old farmer's journal with me. There is one final entry, undated, several blank pages behind the last, with a few pages evidently ripped out in between. Woke up with a funny feeling this morning, and followed it out into the yard, then over the hill to the tower, where I found some raggedy hippie type camped out beneath it. No car in sight. He didn't try to run or anything, just waved to me. I asked him what he was doing. He said he didn't know exactly, just that he had been out driving and found himself drawn to the place, that it felt right being there. I informed him that he was on my property. He said he was sorry and hoped I didn't mind. That he wasn't here to hunt or fish my land or anything like that, but that he just felt compelled to be there, like something inside was holding him on the spot, like something unspeakable would happen if he left. I told him that, unfortunately, I did mind. He said that that was unfortunate indeed, and that he couldn't leave. He said that something important was going to happen there. I asked him what was so important, and he said he didn't know. I said I hated to do it, but I was going to go back and fetch my gun. He didn't flinch. So I had to go and get the gun. I came back and fired a warning shot into the air, and he called my bluff again. What now? I ain't gonna shoot nobody. I shouted at him what was so goddamn important. You'll see, he shouted back. The journal ends there.